Hello everyone, it's Tracy here again from Temperance Tarot, and it's time for my August deck roundup. Per usual, we'll start with the tarot decks and then we'll move on to the oracle decks and we'll see what I liked and what I didn't like, what's going to stay in my collection and what's going to leave. So let's start here with the Healing Light Tarot. This unfortunately was not my favorite tarot deck of the month, and this one will be leaving my collection. And I'm trying to keep it in order because I am actually going to do a comparison flip through in my next video with Stephen Bright's Spirit Within Tarot, because I have heard some comparisons of these two decks and I personally don't think that they are very much alike, energy wise most of all. So I'm going to do that before I actually purge this deck from my collection. There's nothing wrong with this deck. It's a great deck and it probably works well for a lot of people. I prefer my tarot decks to be a little bit more soothing, and this one tended to kind of pump me up. It got me agitated, and I know it's just cards, you know, paper and images, but these images were just a little too full of energy, if that makes sense, with the Vesica Pisces and the focus of a big pile of light. It just was too much for me. And some of the images I found confusing. Once you shuffled all the deck all together, I didn't quite know what card it was. And that's always problematic for me. Unless I'm going to be using a deck pretty much exclusively to where I learn it so backwards and forwards that I don't need to know what the card is, I need to know what the card is. The cardstock is glossy and kind of, I don't know, it's not my favorite cardstock. It's not the worst cardstock in the world. Not my favorite temperance card. But it's a little busy. I think that's part of the issue. Is it's a little bit busy for me with all the bursts of light and the lines, you know, and the images as well. It's just a little too busy. But let me get to some of the minor arcanas that I had the issues with, because it wasn't the majors. The majors I think are great. They do tend to share a common color palette in a suit. So here we have the wands, and it sort of has a yellow-orange color palette. Some of the cards are a little bit pippish, but not terribly. I mean, that's the Six of Wands. You have the wreath, you have the Six Wands. Others are not pippish. It's very similar to the Rider-Waite-Smith. He's got a bug on his back. You know, I can't actually express what it is about this deck that just turns me off, but it just turns me off. And the swords in particular, well, here's one, the Two of Cups. You have the mandorla with a lion in the middle. The two cups are here, and I can see them now, but it took a while. The Three of Cups, just a little bit busy. The Four of Cups, same thing. You know, you've got the central figures, but all these lines, they distracted me. And the one I had the real problem with, let's get to the swords. Yeah. The swords almost look sort of photo negative, and that just doesn't appeal to me. And actually, when I first saw this card in a reading that I did, I thought it was the High Priestess. I thought, you know, two pillars and this figure back here with the moon on her head, because I hadn't recently seen the High Priestess. So, just me. Not terribly inspired by the Three of Swords. But again, I'm going to do a flip through of this one with the Spirit Within in just a few minutes. So if you want to see this one all the way through, you can have a look at that video. This is the very first edition that the 78 Tarot ever put out. And I managed to get it in a trade a while back and gave it a try this month. I have a kind of an on and off love relationship with the 78 Tarot decks. I think that it's a brilliant idea and a wonderful concept, but when it actually generally comes to use the decks, unless I'm just doing a one card pull where I think they work really well for a one card pull, the lack of cohesion in the artwork sometimes, you know, I just find a little off-putting. So this one's really no different, except that it read for me really well. I mean, if you look here, here's the Queen of Cups. Now this is the only year I think that they actually used photographs, and I think this might be the only one, but this is a photograph. And then here you have the Five of Wands, which is Alice in Wonderland in a very different style, and the Nine of Swords in a quite different style. It does give artist credit at the bottom of the card, and because this was the first year they did them, they're standard tarot size. The words on the bottom are smaller. The cardstock isn't quite that as wonderful as some of the newer ones that they've done. This is what the backs look like, which I actually kind of like this kind of back. So yes, generally these cards, these types of decks that have so many different artists don't work for me in a reading. I mean, look how different those are. But there was something special about this deck. I can't quite put my finger on it. And it's that ineffable quality that when I pull out the images and look at them, they tell me a story without me having to, I hate to say work on it, but immediately I get intuitive hits from the images. That's where I'm going. I don't have to work on figuring out what that card means to me. And this deck gave me those intuitive hits, even with the disparate. I mean, that's so different. That's so different. Even with the very different types of art, it just worked for me. So this one is actually going to stay in my collection for a while. I'm not saying I'll never give it up, but I'm not ready to give it up yet. And because it's out of print, and it's been out of print for quite a while, and it's very hard to get a hold of, that's all I'm going to show. If somebody really wants to see all of the cards, let me know, and I will do a separate video for that. You can tell early edition because it comes in this tuck box that is a bit beaten up, and I have trouble getting the cards in and out of. It does have a nice little book though, and it is a little book, but it's a nice little book, and each one has an artist statement, which I really like. I pulled out the Ethereal Visions this month. I took this one on my trip to, I think this one in the 78 Tarot, I took on my trip to Michigan this month. And this, I loved this deck when I first got it. I thought it gave me great readings. I thought it was a beautiful deck, and I still think it's a beautiful deck. I just am not so sure about the color palette anymore. I think it's a little too pale for me. I love all the gilding. I mean, the gilding's beautiful, lovely coherent theme. They're beautiful laid out together. But maybe it's just my eyesight is getting worse as I get older, or my tastes are changing. But the soft pastels of the color palette of this deck, I just don't find as appealing as I did when I first got the deck. But it reads really well, and there's some cards like this Nine of Swords is just amazing. And the guy on the King of Cups, I think I have a little crush on him. So I'm not ready to give it up yet, but I was a little bit surprised at how uninspired I was when I pulled it out this time. Because I did the video on the top 5 decks, or the 5 decks I couldn't live without, I pulled out my Ellis deck again, and when I pulled out my Ellis deck, of course I had to use it. So I used my large borderless Ellis deck this month, and I pulled out one of my other versions, one of my normal tarot size versions. You all know how I feel about this deck. This is a really wonderful deck. I think it reads really well. I think it's really underrated. I don't think it sees enough love from the tarot community. It's got so much nuance in the cards, so many things to see each time you look. I mean, one feature like the hand grabbing the moon might reach out to you the first time. The second time it might be the face in the water, the reflection. The third time it might be the tree or the wolves or dogs or whatever are down there. The death card is particularly great in this one, as is the Hierophant. But yeah, this is pretty much my favorite deck to actually work with. It gives me fabulous readings. It makes sense to me. It's just, I think it's a wonderful deck. Great death card, skeleton, the hourglass, death comes to everyone. And then this little rosebud here up at the top, I love that. Hierophant, sort of a guru feel, sitting on books, which I really love. And then my very favorite temperance card ever. You know, you have angel wings and bat wings and a moon and a sun. And this person, this isn't two people, this is one person with two heads, a female and a male, pouring fire and water. I love this deck. I also pulled out my second edition, I believe this is, of the Stretch Tarot. Yes, second edition is what it is. And I was, you know, it's a fine deck, and I love collage decks. But I think because of my eyesight issues that this one, the images are just a little too small for me to pick out the details that I need to pick out of it. It's a lovely deck, and I like it a lot. But I have other collage decks that I prefer to this one. Other decks that give me the sort of the same feels that this deck does. So I do believe I'm going to let this one go. It's you know, let somebody else have a shot with it who might love it where I just like it. That's kind of my thought process there. The keywords don't bother me. Some decks the keywords bother me. This deck the keywords really don't bother me because you know, sometimes you see them and sometimes you don't. I mean, they're there, but because they're so small, they're unobtrusive. Six of Cups is temptation. Yeah, you see, I don't really agree with that that particular interpretation of the Six of Cups. And based on the image and the keywords, you really can't, it's hard to see anything else. So yeah, I think I'm going to let the Stretch Tarot go. I love the bags. I think the bags are fabulous. Next we have the Muse Tarot and the Lightseers Tarot. I got the bundle with both. I am not going to pull cards out of these decks. They're all over the place right now. So far my experience with these decks has been good. I like them. I don't know that they'll make it to my... I'm not one of those people who's gushing over them, who thinks that they're the best decks that I've ever seen. But they are very nice decks. And the Muse in particular is kind of a mashup in my mind. It's like that the Star Child Tarot and the the Serpent Fire. It's like the Star Child and the Serpent Fire got together and had a baby, and that's kind of the way I see the Muse Tarot. I don't particularly like the fact that the kings, the muse, each of the muses, is landscape rather than portrait. That just throws off the way I read. And here, this is my Empress. Empress is numbered incorrectly, and she did send us a replacement card. Let's see if I can find it. All right. Here's my replacement Empress. I don't know if you can tell, but the corner of my replacement Empress is bent, and the card is not exactly the same size as all the rest of the cards. So here I am going to put this together like this. And you can clearly see where that replacement Empress card is, right here in the middle. The edging is slightly different. It's a hair of a different size, and it's been bent. So I'm actually using the misnumbered Empress in my deck just because it doesn't matter what the number is, and it makes the deck look correct. We also have an extra card. I'm not using that one either. I said I wasn't going to show these cards, and here I go showing them. And the only thing I really dislike about the Light Seers, I have not read the book at all, because I find that the images, this is kind of like Poppy Palin's Everyday Enchantment Tarot. The images give me so much that I don't want my interpretation skewed by the thoughts of the creator. I want to be able to use my interpretations, but I really do hate this setup for the cards because it makes them hard to get out. This paper thing comes out every time I go to get them out. I'm probably going to find a different solution eventually. I understand the desire to get the book in the box because I do like my books in my boxes, but I could have done with less book and a box that was better. For my Muse Tarot, I have number 395 out of 2000. But for my Light Seers Tarot, I have number 13. And then there's my Lucid Tarot and Mindfulness cards by Tarot Mom 13. I really like this deck. I like it a whole lot. It reads really well for me. I did a walkthrough of first impression, so I'm not really going to show this one. This deck is available on MakePlayingCards.com and PrinterStudio.com. She's put them on both places, as well as the Mindfulness cards. There's something that's just eminently readable about this deck, and I love it. I love them both. Now officially moving on to the Oracle section, and I have very few Oracle decks. I've only got 3 to talk about. Let's start with the Kuan Yin Oracle that I did not buy. This came as part of a gift that was given to me by the lovely folks at Magical Omaha as part of I believe it was their August mystery box. Yeah, I had something set aside. This, I don't know how to sugarcoat this and put this in a nice way. This is more of Alana Fairchild's channeled nonsense. I do not like Alana Fairchild's decks. They do not resonate with me. So if you're a fan of Alana Fairchild, that's great. If it works for you, that's fabulous. Her stuff does not work for me. Beautiful artwork. Titles on the cards that say nothing to me of what the artwork is trying to say. And then text in the book that I find to be rather nonsense. So yeah, this deck is going to my witchy shop to sell on consignment. It is just not for me. And I want to give you an example of why I find Alana Fairchild's decks so difficult for me. I pulled number 21, Orchid Priestess of Destiny. Let's find her so that you can look at her while I'm reading about her. Here she is, Orchid Priestess of Destiny. Beautiful painting. It looks to me like she's playing some sort of flute. She's got flowers. She's flowing. It's lovely. The Orchid Priestess of your highest spiritual destiny calls to you now, beloved. She calls you to your purpose, path, and soul passion. You are called to rise again and again to live up into your potential, with all its uniqueness and beauty. She will call you always with her sweet flute playing deep in your heart, blossoms of orchid and chrysanthemum falling from her feet, stirring your heart to quest for your truest soul passion. Well, she does describe the card a little bit there. I really hate it when she starts talking about me as her beloved. But let's continue. You may have felt different to those around you at different times in your life. This is meant to be, beloved one. You cannot be a pioneer of different consciousness on this planet if you feel completely comfortable in the consciousness that already exists around you. Do you know that this was chosen on purpose so you could be on purpose? Your soul chose to be of service by not fitting in so that it would remember through things not feeling right. See, this is part of the problem I have with it. Start that sentence again. Your soul chose to be of service by not fitting in so that it would remember through things not feeling right that it was meant to help correct and heal the consciousness on our planet, starting with the self. Once the self was able to correct and align the consciousness within so that it matched the love and peace that existed deep in the heart, it would be easier to help others to do the same, even if just by inspiration. This is where the Orchid Priestess of Destiny, beloved Kuan Yin, and her devotion to your highest spiritual attainment calls you forward now. Yes, beloved, your divine... Stumbling on those words again. Yes, beloved, your divine destiny is calling you. And it goes on, and I'm not going to go on because it goes on, that's through here, and it goes on from here and here. Nonsense to me. That is nonsense. And to top it all off, she does no research on her subjects. This is supposed to be a Kuan Yin oracle. There is nothing in this book about Kuan Yin, who Kuan Yin was, the legend of Kuan Yin, whatever you want to do it. There's nothing about that in here. I read the entire introduction, which is like 2 pages. No, sorry, that's it. That is it. Kuan Yin is the mother of compassion. She doesn't talk about where the Kuan Yin legends come from. So I really have a problem with Alana Fairchild. And, you know, again, if these Alana Fairchild decks resonate with you, great. Next, I pulled out the Magical Times Empowerment cards because I had really enjoyed these in the past. But this is another one of those decks where it's just not giving me as much as I want, or exactly what I want. And I have so many decks that it just doesn't make sense to keep ones that I feel ambivalent about, that I don't really like. It's lovely. It's beautiful. I love the artwork. And it has nice messages too. Focus on how far you have come, not on how far you have to go. You'll find help in unexpected places. So it's not too fortune-tellery like with the Alana Fairchild, where it was telling you this is happening for you right now. Well, I want, from my oracle cards, I want more advice on how to handle what I'm dealing with right now. I don't want you to tell me what's going to happen, because that's not how I use the cards. But I love that. That's beautiful. This one's a little fortune-tellery. You're transforming. Let go of the past. Again, I prefer advice from my oracle cards, not fortune-telling. This one's really good. Pay attention to the subtleties. That's giving me advice on how to handle a situation. But again, you know, if it's not wowing me, I'm going to let it go. And then here's my last one. The original Arthur Rackham Oracle 2nd edition Kickstarter came this month in a lovely 2-part hard box with gilded edges. And they're kind of slippery. They're not matte. They're definitely slippery. But I had this deck before. I paid like $60 for this deck before. And it just didn't work for me, so I traded it away. And then when I saw his Kickstarter and he was doing them for $25 on the Kickstarter, I was like, okay, I'm going to try it again. And this time I really do love it. It is really well balanced. There are no meanings in the deck other than you have coterie, kindred spirits, exigency, some difficult words, I must admit, unpleasant but necessary, providence, anonymous benefactors, navigation, charting your own course. Are all Arthur Rackham artwork, obviously. And he did some work on cleaning them up and making them brighter and easier to see the images. And it's just gorgeous. And I love it. And I love the balanced nature of it. And I love that I can focus on the keywords or focus on the image to get a message for myself. I really do like it. The little pamphlet, you know, is not much. It talks about who Arthur Rackham was and the divination system. Most of these illustrations came from his books of several of Grimm's fairy tales, A Midsummer Night's Dream, and Ibsen's Peter Gynt. So if I wanted to do the research about the text that these images was actually illustrating, I'd go find the Arthur Rackham illustrated versions of those books. But yeah, we do have, I mean, acrimony, that's a bit of a difficult word. Intemperance, subversion, but it does appeal a little bit to the word geek in me, the person who loves to expand her vocabulary. And I love Arthur Rackham's artwork. So yeah, this one I'm not getting rid of. It's kind of like the Dame Darcy Tarot. I have had 3 different iterations of the Dame Darcy Tarot, and it was the third one that I absolutely love and is the one I'm keeping. Well, with this Rackham Oracle, the first one was traded, the second one I'm going to keep. So there you go, lovelies. This is my deck roundup for August. I hope you have a fabulous day, and thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching.